Hey everyone, I'm Nick.
I'm Sam.
And welcome to another edition of Griot's Garage YouTube Live. This time we're talking about hot weather washing.
Out here on a beautiful sunny day. Got a little better weather this week.
Yeah, finally.
Our originally intended date.
You know, Washington is a beautiful place to live, but summer is short and sweet and you really ever can't depend upon it. So
Yeah.
we wanted to make sure that this was authentic, so we had to preface this and be sure that you know that this is not actually live. This is just us getting the ideal conditions to show you what a struggle it can be to wash in high heat or direct sunlight, which I'm pretty sure we have captured right now. There's not a cloud in the sky, and we're at about 75 degrees at approximately 11 a.m. here in Tacoma, Washington.
Yeah, sun is almost directly overhead, so it's about as direct as you can get.
So we're gonna try and teach you guys everything we know about how to wash in hot weather conditions. This is not foreign to either of us. As mobile detailers in our past, we've had to go to people's houses, wash either in the morning or the evenings or the middle of the day, and kind of struggle through the reality of non-ideal conditions. So we're hopefully gonna teach you some things that will help make your washing process easier if these are the conditions that you're either consistently or from time to time faced with.
Yeah, we've got a pretty awesome giveaway for you guys today. So make sure you're down in the comments submitting questions. We'll pick among those and the pre-submits for the best question that we get. And the giveaway is going to be one of our portable deionizer systems to help make your life easier if and when you do have to wash in direct sunlight. The deionizer really will prevent the risk of any water spots, which is one of the biggest risks of washing in direct sun.
Critical topic we'll address a little bit later on, but yes, this is not live, but please participate in the chat, submit your questions. We still will do a no questions left behind the Friday afterwards on our YouTube channel, so you will have a chance to win, and we'll announce the winners at that time on Friday. And we will also have a Griot's Garage employee in this broadcast if you're watching on Wednesday at 4 p.m. Pacific on our YouTube channel, which is when this will debut, to answer your questions in the chat as fast as possible. They won't be able to get to every single one.
No.
That's why we have no questions left behind. So be sure to participate. And then I think we're also going to give away a couple of those sweet hats that you're wearing as well.
Great tool for washing in direct sun, mowing your lawn on a sunny day, just about anything you can think of.
Also telling people at a car show, stay away from me. I don't want to talk to you. And keeping that precious face of yours protected from UV rays.
Chilling on the back patio with a cold beverage, whatever it might be.
So we got a couple news and events that we're gonna talk to you about, and then we're gonna get right to it. This is gonna be a fast process. That's like probably the hardest thing about doing this in direct sunlight, is that you have to speed up everything. And we're gonna walk you through how we get prepared, how we do it, tips and tricks, some potential investments you can make that are much less expensive than an indoor wash facility like we get to enjoy here at Griot's Garage. And yeah, so we'll get through that really quick, and then we'll get to washing. We're going for an hour, and that's about as long as it should hopefully take you to do this process in this type of condition.
A lot to go over in a little less time than we normally do a live in. So
but we won't be distracted by a lot of these comments, right?
Yes.
So, okay, so first up, we've got Radwood in San Fran. Wonderful event, July 22nd at Pier 30 and 32 in San Francisco, California. We will be there supporting Radwood, 80s and 90s themed show. Show up, dress out, bring out your K car or whatever ugly thing you've got from the 80s and 90s, and you will be celebrated.
That's an event-heavy time of the year. Next up, we have Pittsburgh Grand Prix, Vintage Grand Prix, July 23rd to the 24th in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
It's in Shenley Park, one of my favorite shows. They race like sub 2-liter cars throughout the park. It's wild. It's a great time if you're on the East Coast.
Really cool event.
Good guys, 35th annual Pacific Northwest National, sponsored by us here at Griot's Garage. We're gonna have the kickoff party here at the headquarters. So if you're bringing a hot rod out locally, you can come hang out with us on Thursday, and then obviously go to the show Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. That is the 28th through the 30th. Again, kickoff parties here, the 27th, the Thursday. The rest of the show is Friday through Sunday at the Washington State Fairgrounds.
Yeah, right down the road. And then we have the Pacific Northwest Cars and Gear Show, July 30th. That is here at the flagship retail store, 10 to 2 p.m.
And of course, one of my other favorite shows, Hot August Nights down in Reno. God, that's a slog. It's a lot of work. You're working until like 10 p.m. at night. That is August 1st through 6th. Our booth is going to be at the Peppermill Casino down there in Reno. It is one of the best hot rod shows and like hot rod weeks, really.
Yeah, totally.
We're having a great time. We're meeting all you guys, but come see us down there at Hot August Nights.
Fun show. Next up, huge event, Rolex Monterey Motorsports Reunion, August 16th through 19th at Laguna Seca during Car Week. Awesome time if you're in California or have the ability to make it down there. Everything cars all week long, whether you be at the track or on the strip in Monterey.
Yeah, and then we've got the Legends of the Autobahn show that we support with the BMW Car Club of America and Porsche Works Reunion. And I think a couple other shows. So we're everywhere that week. It is another really busy week, and then Richard and I are going to be racing that week. So come see us. That's where the company was started, how Richard started prospecting. It's part of our history. We love going to that show, so come see us if you can. And then finally, I guess that's it, actually.
If for events, it's event-heavy time of year. So if you're looking for a car show to go to, there's probably one in your area or somewhere close by.
Yeah, and then, of course, as always, if you love what we do, you can help us out by signing up for our emails, subscribing to our YouTube channel, hitting the notification bell so you don't miss another live event or any of our educational and informative videos that we put out on this place. And then, of course, Instagram and Facebook are other places where we dump great creative content and educational shorts that you can benefit from, and obviously learn about some of our sales first. So give us a follow, tell the corporate powers that be that you like what Sam, Stevie, and I do here, and that you want more of it.
And if you're not already subscribed, make sure you get down there and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hit that thumbs up, like the video, helps us out a lot. And as always, comment so you enter into that giveaway.
Yeah. Okay, so hot weather washing. We're gonna jump right in, and I think it's time to call Stevie around. Stevie, bring it around.
All right.
So,
here she comes.
If you can't avoid conditions, let's talk about the ideal conditions to wash a car. Everybody knows what should be pretty basic conditions. Do it in shade, do it in a cool environment. Overcast is ideal. But if you gotta wash out in the sun, there's a couple things, including what we're about to demonstrate here by Stevie pulling this car out right now. That is pretty important.
Yeah. So, I mean, number one, checking your water. I would say that water quality is a source of a lot of issues if you are washing out in the heat, especially if you're a mobile detailer. Having a water deionizer on board or with you when you go out to a uncontrolled environment to wash a car is a great way to help prevent issues. If you don't have that ability, you're just going to want to make sure you get that water off the surface quick before water spots start to set in.
Yeah, hard water is obviously something that, in particular with direct sunlight, is going to be a challenge, because when it does dry up, you're going to have mineral deposits that are, nobody likes those. The other thing we just demonstrated is, ideally you're not starting with a hot car. So we had the car in a covered space, for example, say your garage, and you can't wash your car with soap and water in the garage, so you can at least store it there. We've got a black car here, a big Land Cruiser that we wanted to demonstrate this process on. And if you're already fighting the paint and surface being hot, that's going to accelerate the water drying on the surface. So keep it stored or in the shade as long as possible, in particular if that's not the same spot that you have to wash in. So that's a good tip. A lot of times when you arrive at a mobile site, the car's been outside already. Somebody's like, oh, I'm doing you a favor by parking it outside, getting it ready for you. Well, then you're walking into a surface that's already 100+ degrees. So thanks for nothing there, right?
Yeah, a hot surface, even if it's in the shade, can cause just as much issues as having sun overhead. And another thing is to, ideally, if you can, this isn't always a luxury, but try to pick a time of day where the sun's not directly overhead. Or if it is, if you have a slice of shade in the driveway, or washing the shaded side of the vehicle and then flipping it around to wash the other side, so that you're doing both sides in the shade out of direct sunlight. We're not going to do that today, to kind of show you guys worst case scenario and how to combat not having those conditions, but those are a couple other good tips, early morning, late in the evening, or trying to find a little bit of shade.
Yeah, I'm not a compass master like you may be, but from where we're standing, that is east and that is west.
Yeah.
And typically the sun rises in the east and travels west. So even knowing the direction of the sunlight relative to where you have to wash your car can help you guide your process relative to what you just stated. Like the west side of the car right now is technically the shaded side based upon the angle of the sun and it coming from the east. Flipping it around is going to change that, right? So as we turn the car around, you're gonna have that. There are still some flat spots that in high sun, like we're almost at noon here, are always going to be flat, hot, and collect the most heat. So we're gonna have to deal with those, you know, just as we will prescribe. But all of those things can set you up for success. If you can't wash your car early in the morning or late in the evening, you gotta do it in the middle of the day, whether you're a pro or you just have, you know, a remote location that you can't do something in, or your hose is over here, your garage and carport are over there. We're gonna work with you. We're gonna help you make it easier.
Yeah, and if you don't have the ability to find shade, or, you know, wash in the morning or the evening when the sun is lower, again, Deionizer is a great way to help combat any issues that you're gonna have, specifically with water spots and water drying on the finish. And then second, you know, really relatively inexpensive solution would be an easy up awning. You know, you get a 10 by 20 easy up for $200 to $500 or so depending on the quality of the product that you're looking at. But that's another great way, especially if you're a mobile detailer and you don't know the conditions of the driveway that you're going to be in or the location that you're going to be at.
Yeah, and you know, easy ups aren't perfect, let's be honest.
No.
Like they've got a little bit of shade, but the same way we were talking about relative to the direction of the sun, where you can park the car, and those flat surfaces such as your roof and your hood being also the largest painted surfaces, an easy up can at least keep the temperature cooler on those big flat surfaces, so that now you're only dealing with flipping the sides around into shade and non-shaded surfaces. Yeah. So it does minimize the impact. And from an investment standpoint, it's a lot cheaper to buy an easy up at $200 to $600 or a water deionizing system at about $400 to $500 total investment. Then say build a carport, go deal with your local bureaucracy relative to an improvement. I mean, you're talking 5-figure improvements versus, you know, a couple $100. So if it's something you know you're gonna have to deal with all the time, it might be worthwhile to look into those things. But let's presume you got no cash to spare and you gotta just wash your car in the sun.
Yeah.
How do we go about this?
Splitting it off into sections is the easiest way to approach it. So you have, you know, a few different solutions that we're going to go over in rinseless washing, which can be one of the most user-friendly in the sun, especially if the vehicle's not terribly dirty. Typical hose and bucket washing, which, you know, everybody has the ability of doing, or using a foam cannon. But really with all three of those methods, you don't want to soak the whole vehicle in water or foam at once. You want to split it off into sections, do small areas so that you're able to get those areas clean and potentially dry before moving on to the next, preventing any issues with streaks, water spots, residue, stuff like that.
Yeah, and the color of the car has a big determinant on that too. Like a black car, I mean, we're gonna touch this thing in a couple minutes and yeah, it's already warm. So a lighter color car is still gonna get hot, but it won't be as hot as say a black car. I've actually started my Lincoln after it's been parked in the sun here and had it overheat in a 200 foot stretch, just because the engine bay was that hot because of the magnification of that black paint. And granted, it's a lot of, you know, area.
Yeah.
So it was totally like a magnifying glass. So sections are great. And then I think really dialing in your process relative to if you're mobile, you don't have the dedication of a hose, you're pretty much confined to a rinseless method. And if you're gonna do something like a polishing process and the car is a little dirtier than say you'd prefer on a rinseless method, well, I'd rather take the risk of the swirl marks from the rinseless method than the water spots of a hose method.
Yeah.
And so you really have to kind of calculate your trade-off. If somebody just wants a quick wash, yeah, you might wanna go for a hose and bucket because the more water will give you a little bit more working time. If you're going to do polishing process as part of this, and you're gonna do that in the direct sunlight, man, you got a lot of stuff to fight against, and you're gonna have a very, very small area, busy day. You're not gonna flow as well, but you're gonna get the job done slowly but surely.
Yeah, another great tip, you know, really as with any process, but specifically when you're washing out in the heat, you're not gonna have the time or the luxury to meander back into the garage to grab a wash mitt or a dry towel or something that you forgot. So using detail carts and having everything prepared and at hand before you start is really important, so that you're not fumbling around trying to find stuff as water or soap is drying on the surface.
Yeah, and to further reemphasize your point, and I think we should get to demoing pretty quick, because this car is going to get a complete detail. We did use it in one of our last lives actually, but it had been refinished, and it's going to get, you know, a deep polish process. So we're okay essentially showing you what could potentially happen if it does seize on the paint, because we're going to polish it.
Yep.
But sections and small areas are really critical, and that really favors the rinseless methodology in a high heat situation, because you generally tend to work in sections. However, when you're thinking about the other high water situations, such as foaming or hose and bucket method, think about the amount of water that you're putting on the surface. One of the things that you actually have with a pressure washer at a gallon per minute rate is a reduced amount of water that you're distributing to the paint. If you're putting less water on the paint, that's going to have a higher propensity to dry more quickly. So you might actually bias it towards a traditional hose, which could be 6 to 8 gallons per minute. So more water on the paint, it's going to take a little bit longer to dry. And then as you try and keep that surface wet throughout your washing process, you're going to be able to re-wet it pretty substantially. So important things to consider: sections and less water versus moving your way up to now actually pressure washing is less water on the paint. It might dry up faster versus, you know, a traditional hose and bucket method. So there's a couple of ways to skin this cat.
Yeah, not being afraid to re-wet the paint, like Nick mentioned, is important. It's kind of counterintuitive, you know, especially if you foam the car and the foam's dwelling. But if you see it drying or starting to dry, you know, re-wetting the paint isn't going to hurt. It's much better to lose a little bit of that foam than it is to let it dry on the surface and potentially get spots.
It's also going to cool off the surface of that paint every time you hit it with cooler hose water. So another big benefit.
We'll see what temp this paint is sitting at now. So hit a couple different spots. This has only been out in the sun. You know, it was in the shade until Stevie pulled it around 10 minutes ago or so. It's already sitting at 108, 112 degrees, depending on where we're looking. Yeah, 122 degrees on the hood. So already getting pretty hot. I've seen, you know, cars, vehicle paint, especially on a black vehicle, get upwards of near 200 degrees when it's out in the sun for a prolonged period of time. So you definitely want to work quickly when your paint's getting that hot.
All right, so let's get to demoing. So we just talked about keep the car in the shade as long as possible, but the other thing you can do is prep your products. All right, so we've already got our rinseless wash and wax mixed in solution here in our collapsible silicone bucket, and we're going to go around, at least do a fender and show you how quickly you can manage a small section of the car and dry it safely before water spotting occurs.
Yeah, PFM towels are one of your best friends when you're washing in the heat, because they help dry up everything way quicker than you're normally used to with a standard drying towel. Another tip with rinseless wash when you're out in the heat, don't wring your wipe towel out as much. So I'm gonna go ahead, you know, we're outside, I'm not worried about making a mess. I'm gonna just go ahead and leave that towel completely soaked. So I'm not wringing any water out, just what dripped out in the bucket.
Also provide a little bit more lubrication if the car is on the dirtier side.
Yeah, then we're just gonna work nice and quick. So you'll probably see this starting to dry, you know, as I'm wiping over it. We'll get it wiped across that surface. This surface isn't too dirty, so I wasn't worried about wiping back and forth. Obviously, the dirtier it is, the more you want to be methodical about, you know, one direction passes and being careful there. But nice and quick and easy. Make sure the water you're using isn't, you know, piping hot either, because that's going to contribute. So don't mix up your water too early. That water's still nice and cold. So quick pass over a panel. You know, don't do half the car at a time like you might normally, but just move nice and quick, panel at a time. Super easy way to do it, as long as the vehicle's not, you know, filthy dirty.
And as we spoke to, even introducing that water is going to cool off the surface, so that surface drop to 85 degrees.
Yep.
All right, so when we introduce more water, we're going to presume some surface temperature drop, but with direct sunlight, we don't have a lot of time. So that's super quick way, super safe way. Still, Rinseless we kind of put in the middle of the spectrum relative to the amount of water used and the amount of safety relative to how dirty the car is. But that seemed pretty logical, right?
Yeah.
That's a great way to do it.
Not a whole lot of headaches involved. You can really control, you know, the water that you're putting on the surface versus using a hose or a pressure washer where water's kind of, you know, you're getting overspray and water splashing onto adjacent areas and things like that. So that can be a great way to get the job done out in the heat. Also something that you can do, you know, if you're out on the road, you're staying at a hotel, something like that, you know, fill up the bucket in your sink in your room, or, you know, even at a local gas station, whatever you need to do.
Or buying a couple gallons at a grocery store, something like that.
Great way to get it done, very versatile. And one thing too with the Rinseless, this is Rinseless Wash and Wax. Nice thing about this is, you know, if I do take this to the paint and put it on and let a spot dry, it's gonna still wipe off pretty easily. So I mean, that's with the wax additive in there, it's also gonna help the water break off the surface quickly. But if that does start to dry, you can always just re-wet your towel, take it back over the surface, and then, you know, wipe it up dry after that. But even standing here and talking, it's not dry enough to be difficult to wipe off. So I can still
but it was wicking pretty fast.
Wipe it off. Yeah, there were a couple sections where it was starting to dry up.
Yeah. So we're gonna probably remeasure the temperature on the surface and then introduce some bigger water as we show you a foaming process. And that would be the secondary step. Now, one thing that's pretty important, you know, with routine washes, you know, we're generally recommending a pH neutral soap, such as our Brilliant Finish Car Wash, our Brilliant Finish Snow Foam, or our Boss System Foaming Surface Wash. You do not want to skew on the side of something that has a protective element, such as our foaming polygloss or ceramic washing coat, or something that is alkaline like our foaming surface prep. All of those things generally want time to bond to the surface, and with the lack of time that you have in a high heat environment, probably best to skip those steps and try and introduce the protection some other time. We're just trying to get the car clean here and set ourselves up for success, not go backwards. So the pH neutral soaps are what we'd recommend. You still want to avoid letting them dry on the surface. So when we generally recommend, you know, 5 to 10 minutes of dwell time, in this environment, we're going to take what we can get, right? And we're going to watch how the soap is responding, and then finally, you know, rinse progressively and try and work in small areas as well. I might suggest that for a dwelling foaming soap, we could do a half of the car at a time, but we're still going to get some overspray onto surfaces that we aren't trying to treat. So how do we balance that and go back and forth and try and manage that soap not dwelling? Benefit of a pH neutral soap, not going to be any potential for scarring. It'll just be soap scum related water spots, but it's still something you're going to fight. So we want to avoid that as much as possible.
Yeah, and you want to avoid chasing your tail too much. I was going to say, even if the foam does dry, you can, you know, re-wet it again or just go back over it with a wet wash mitter tool, and that will help remove it. Obviously, you don't want to have to keep doing that over and over. So it's really something, you know, if you have to walk away and go use the bathroom or something like that, it's not going to be the end of the world. Like Nick said, a pH balanced soap isn't going to etch or anything like that. Especially if you come back, you know, re-wet it and then wipe over. Usually in my experience, you know, if I'm out with the kids or something like that and I've got to go chase one of them back inside and I come back out, the foam's starting to dry, just either hit it with water or take your mitt back over it and then re-dry it, and you'll be out of trouble.
Yeah, and part of this too is understanding, like, we're in the highest sun that we're gonna get here today, right? Noon. And it's bearing down on this car.
Yeah.
Just touching this car, it's uncomfortable. It's not scorching hot, but it's definitely not a cool surface to operate on, which is what we generally prefer. In this scenario, if I know that that heat from the car is already going to accelerate the dry time of the foam, I might opt to say, I don't want max dwell time on the foam. I might rinse the car first, which is something that we don't generally recommend, just to drive the surface temperature down, and then follow up with a quick foam and a quick rinse. Still accomplishing the goal of softening up whatever on the car, but I'm lowering that surface temperature, so I'm allowing the foam to work a little longer. So it really just depends on if you are in direct sunlight, but it's evening or the morning, that surface temperature may not be causing that, and you'll have a little bit more time to work with the foam. However, if it's already hot, you can't put your hand to it, probably best to rinse first. And that's where I tend to like a traditional hose and bucket. But we're gonna show you with the pressure washer first.
Yeah, one of those situations that you're just gonna have to adapt at times. So it's not always gonna be what you're used to.
And it still always comes back down to water.
Excuse me, Nick. All right, so this is just our Brilliant Finish foam cannon with the Brilliant Finish snow foam.
And we're gonna measure the temperature one more time.
How hot that paint is.
So this you've watched a couple times is at 80.
Oh, I think the tip's back on.
Oh, yeah, no wonder.
My fault.
109 on the fender, 109 on the door, 105 on the rear door, 113 on the rear fender. So that's pretty dang hot, guys.
Yeah, so pretty uniform across, but definitely getting up there. And as you can see, that's 5 to 10 degrees hotter than it was when we originally measured, with it sitting here for another 5 or 10 minutes. So we'll go ahead and, what do you think, do the back half?
I think so, yeah.
All right, so we'll foam the back half and give it a little bit of dwell time, but like Nick said, not as much as you would be used to. Oh, pressure washer turn off. There you go.
A little bit of technical difficulties. We're still recording this live,
Yeah,
guys.
still uncut. Just had to give you confidence we're not fudging anything here. All right, well.
We might have a clogged pressure washer or cannon.
Something.
Very good. Well, this is a perfect time to remind you guys to like and subscribe this video in light of the fact that we are about as honest as can be and are doing these lives for your benefit in general. So, as soon as we get these sorted out, we'll get back to our originally scheduled programming. All right, looks like Sam got that figured out. We're trying our best here, guys, but this is live programming, so bear with us. We're trying to be as honest as possible.
Yeah. Tested well at start. Not sure what was going on there.
All right.
Plugged into different outlets, different setup than what we're used to out here.
It's real.
Yep. So we'll still foam from the bottom up. Spread that foam out a little bit. I'm gonna do my best to not cover the roof in foam. Now we'll get up there, but we don't want to spread it out over the other side of the car and get it running down the other side where we're not gonna get to right away.
You still got a little overspray, as we mentioned.
Yep.
We're gonna kind of try and mitigate that by rinsing consistently and keeping the surface wet until we eventually wash, the whole thing, or dry the whole thing. Excuse me.
We've got some wash mop sticks to help us get up on the roof, and a 7-in-1 platform that we'll bring in to get up there as well. So we'll probably re-wet the roof right before we start mitting, just to get everything.
We've got about a 30-degree temperature drop just from applying that foam. So we've got a little bit of working surface, but still not room temperature like we get to enjoy indoors. So we're gonna watch it. We generally recommend 5 to 10 minutes of dwell time. But as you can see, even in direct sunlight, we've got some time. It's not like you have to run around like your pants are on fire, but we are trying to ask the foam to do something that in general we give it more time to do. But right now we do have some dry surfaces, even though the foam is dripping off of it. So we're going to most likely try and rinse, or Sam, are we gonna go right to agitation?
I think we can rinse first, keep the process as we would normally do it.
But when we do rinse, surface is going to be wet. It's not going to have the foam, that kind of mixture, to defer or slow down the drying. Yep. So we're going to have to wash pretty quickly. So this is part of being prepared and having your tools ready. Right now we've got a bucket mixed with 4 gallons of water because, again, we're going to bias towards more water use, and 4 ounces of Brilliant Finish car wash. And as Sam mentioned, our wash mop stick and wash pad combo. So we're gonna go right after this as soon as we rinse.
As one of the things I usually change up when I'm working out in the sun or in the heat. You can see it's already starting to dry in some of these more bare areas where the foam has dripped off. we would normally rinse from the bottom up for this initial, pre-wash step. I'm gonna go ahead and start from the top down, just so we don't have that foam sitting on there and drying even more.
In particular, because you can see it's already starting to foam up and create some spots. Now these are just soap spots.
Yep,
so
those will come right off.
Come right off.
Especially as soon as we hit it with a mitt. We'll get some water up there on the roof, get that cooled down a little bit before we re-foam it. Rinse off nice and quick. Cooling that surface down. All right.
So with that, foam is rinsed off. Again, pretty small section, just the back 2 doors. We can either re-foam again and use that foam as the lubricant, which we've done in the past, just to get that surface spread so we can work a little faster, or we have our soap and bucket, or our traditional bucket solution set up here with a traditional wash tool, and I'm just gonna go after it. Top down like I would normally wash. Again, this car's not extremely dirty, but at least with the wand, I'm reaching a little further, which I like.
Get up there.
Or with a mitt. Just gonna work. Same process applies to actually everything else, right? We're not being cavalier about it. We're just working a little faster.
Yep. And I'll go ahead and get up on the roof while you're getting that.
It does help to have a buddy too, huh?
Yeah. Get your kids outside, or even, ask your wife, get her outside, wash in the car.
I will suggest too
like
that
to do that.
You did foam the wheel and tire. Now, one of the things that still applies to all the systems, including glass, wheels, and tires, is they're going to be hot too, right? So all those processes need to be abbreviated. The simplicity of working on a single wheel and tire package is that you do one at a time. You don't want them to start hot like you would with any other wheel cleaning process. You don't want to go on a spirited drive, come back and start cleaning your wheels. You don't want to have your car in the sun for 20 minutes, get that wheel heated up, and then all of a sudden heavy duty wheel cleaner is drying prematurely, causing potential risk. Even though it is pH neutral, it's still soap scum and stuff you're going to have to chase. So small areas apply to every surface of the exterior of the vehicle. Now Sam got the area of the roof that we had risk relative to getting soap on, and we got the back. Still, we got some temperature there.
Yeah.
Even though we sprayed a lot of water on it and we did some agitation with a cold bucket full of soap and water, but we're gonna have time to rinse it.
Yeah, and you can still see in areas that soap and water is starting to dry. I forget my tip there.
Make sure to check it away from the car.
Yeah.
Otherwise we're gonna get called on it.
And always, again, we're gonna start top down just to save time. At this point, you would usually do that anyways. I'm gonna kind of flood the roof, make sure we get all that soap off of there. Another good tip, we're gonna stay over here just to stay on camera, but if you're doing this at home and you haven't washed the other side of the car yet, you have soap on the roof, go around and rinse that soap off towards the side you've already washed. That way you don't have soap dripping down the unwashed side that you're not gonna get to right away.
So as you can see, there's no panic here. Granted, we're about 75, 80 degrees at this point. If you're dealing with 100 or 90 plus, you might have to work a little bit faster, but
yeah,
in general, pH neutral soap, lots of water on the surface, and that water cooling down the surface, you're gonna have a little bit more time than say like super fast panic, but keeping that surface wet until you're ready to dry is pretty critical. And again, we saw some drying already with the soap mixture, but that rinse got rid of it right away. So we're just talking about soap scum, essentially, that you're rinsing off. And so long as you don't allow it to completely seize up and dry, you can fight it with a simple rinse.
Yeah, you can see we've been doing some testing on this Land Cruiser. Got
Yeah.
a really well protected panel and a pretty flat panel.
That's clearly a competitive product. So if I were to continue that process, I'd probably work down the car going driver or passenger door, passenger fender.
Yep.
And then while I'm rinsing that, I'm generally trying to maintain the wetness of that back area. It doesn't have to be flooded, but just simply wanting to make sure that we're not seeing that water dry right away. So are you using a little bit more water in this process? Sure. Are you avoiding more painful results? In particular, if you have hard water? Oh yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, and there have even been scenarios where I'll dry the half that I've already washed before moving to the other half. So there's some different scenarios that you can, or different methods that you can use there that you wouldn't normally employ. Obviously, I'm probably going to get a little water on this side if I dry it and then go wash the other half. But at least you know that the water that you're getting on it hasn't been sitting there for 5-10 minutes, potentially, drying and leaving water spots.
Yeah, so the other thing to keep in mind, a well-protected car, its job is to drive water off the surface, making your drying process easier. That also means in high heat, it's gonna dry up those water beads a little bit faster.
Yeah.
So with a reduced water system, such as a pressure washer, where again, I said it's about 2 to 2.5 gallons per minute with some of the highest output pressure washers versus a water hose, it's only really gonna be dependent upon your protection, that the amount of water that's left on there. But you can definitely flood the car a lot easier with a full pressure hose than you can with a pressure washer. And as we can see, we've definitely already got some spots that are drying out.
And if you have, deionized water like we do, really low TDS, you're hooked up to a deionizer, you don't necessarily have to worry as much about, rinsed water sitting on that surface. As long as you have all the soap off, the water that's there, if it's deionized water and say below probably 20 or so TDS, ideally, you're not gonna have to worry about water spots forming typically. You still wanna dry it eventually.
Or they would be easy enough to remove with something like a quick detail spray, or even just a re-rinse or a retouch with your washing tool.
Yeah, going back over it.
So let's re-rinse this one more time, and then we'll show some of our drying aids as part of this process. And I think your point is probably one of the best taken, Sam, is that if you can manage to keep one side of your car wet, you might want to actually dry that car or dry that side and then move to the next side. In particular, if you're doing what we talked about, where you've got one shaded side and one hot side, and flipping them around and managing them that way, because the amount of water that's going to spray over, say, the roof or hood of the car onto your just dried surface is going to be so much smaller than leaving this massive side undried.
Yeah. And it's sitting there for less time. So, by the time you're drying the second side, you can just quickly buzz around, dry up any residual water. And like Nick mentioned too, usually at that point, if you are starting to form, water's dripping down the side out of a vent or a window and it's starting to spot, typically at that point, going over it with a damp dry towel is gonna pick up any beginnings of a water spot that have started to form. You just don't want to let it sit there and bake in, as you finish the wash or go do other things.
Yeah, so I'm gonna hit this whole side one more time, and then we're gonna show you a couple other drying methods that I like.
And we're gonna use the drying aids because that can be a better, safer way to get protection on the vehicle during a hot weather direct sun wash, in lieu of using a product like ceramic washing coat, foaming polygloss, or a rinse aid, where you're gonna, that protection is gonna be sitting on there a little longer with the potential to dry up. With a drying aid, you have a little more control. You can spray it on a small section, dry that section immediately, and then move on.
I also think too, working in sections gives you kind of directional guidance.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
Washing the passenger side of the car, I got overspray onto the roof and onto the hood. Now, just a very little bit of water on the hood, but this is gonna be the next spot I wash.
Yep.
So ideally, I'll either keep that wet or be engaging those water spots with some soap and water solution soon, so as to prevent like some heavy water etching that I could create. So, drying aids, should we talk about those?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so we've got a couple options here. one of the most traditional drying aids we have is spray on wax. This is a carnauba based product. Again, drying aids really help add lubrication, add a little bit of pop, replenish a little bit of protection. They're not great standalone protectants outside of ceramic speed shine and rinseless wash and wax, which actually have quite ample protection on their own. But spray on wax is going to be a more traditional carnauba product. This is what I used the most when I was doing high heat washes. Just a little bit more flexibility, a little bit more forgiveness in those high heat scenarios. And then I would say rinseless wash and wax at 15:1 would be second most forgiving. The one that I love the most, but is going to require the quickest work time and also really a ceramic base coat to justify using it is ceramic speed shine. So all of those will help create more lubrication, add more liquid to the surface, easing your drying process. And then again, that fresh kind of protection element will help stave off those hard water spots that could come if you do get overspray as part of the rest of your washing process.
That's one important thing to mention is overspray when you're using a drying aid. If you're outside, you know, it's pretty windy out here today, not terribly windy, but there's a nice breeze going. So you're gonna wanna pay attention to the direction of the wind and what surfaces you're spraying. You know, if you're spraying upwind and you're moving in that direction, you're gonna end up getting overspray that gets lifted up by the wind and settled back on the panels that you've already done. So make sure you're thinking about that as you're moving. Usually you'll realize it after a panel or two if you are doing it upwind and working in the wrong direction. But just
maybe Matt can see this. The direction of that spray is going absolutely down the direction of the car. So we're gonna try and work front to back with spray on wax and any drying aid we use. So
keep it from,
again, just we're getting it moving down the car with us. Yeah, just light spritzes. We can do this on the glass too.
Yeah, and like Nick said, spray on wax is pretty darn forgiving in this process. Not a lot to worry about because even if it does dry, it'll wipe back up pretty easily.
In particular too, if you're gonna correct this car afterwards, a drying aid really is just gonna produce or reduce the potential for wash-induced scratches by adding that lubrication. It's not necessarily a waste of money outside of ceramic speed shine because you're gonna get some durability out of ceramic speed shine, but spray on wax is just gonna create a slicker surface and make it safer in this particular type of environment to dry the car. So
yeah, and it's not enough protection to cause any problems when you go to polish over it.
No, that's why I really liked it a lot. And again, it's soft enough that if you do see that, oh, I didn't wipe that dry enough, and I've got a little bit of cloudiness from the carnauba that's within it.
Yeah, like down here, it's already dry.
Yeah, right here.
It's kind of hazed up, but it still wipes off nice and easy, especially when you have a little bit of moisture in your dry towel. If that was ceramic speed shine, you'd probably want to re-wet it, spray more of the liquid, spray more ceramic speed shine across that section just to make sure it wipes up nicely. But with spray on wax, it's nice and forgiving. Still adds the value of that extra protection, but not worried about getting you in trouble.
No, and if I'm a pro on a cost basis, adding that drying aid, got a nice slick surface here.
Oh yeah.
Got a little bit of pop. If you're doing a basic wash, sure, it's a great way to end it, but again, serve the base coat. So you might use ceramic speed shine if you're just doing a basic wash. But I've got no grief about the amount of product that I just used and polishing that right off in a more substantial correction or detailing job. So
it's been a while since I've used spray on wax.
It's quite nice.
It's nice and slick. Love that. Nice. Love that fragrance too.
Like I said, it made me a lot of money in high school and helped me in these particular environments where, as you mentioned, you're just in a hot spot, it's drying up, but man, it's easy to push around that organic carnauba wax. A lot easier than, say, synthetic like our ceramic speed shine. Now, rinseless wash and wax, I would use the exact same way. This is going to be a blend of carnauba and polymer, so you're still going to have some flexibility, but at 15:1, you can use it as a drying aid the exact same way.
Yep. Yeah, and still real easy. You saw we covered, both of us were drying together, but even if it was just one of us, Nick covered the majority of the side of the vehicle in one hit. If you were using ceramic speed shine, you would just want to minimize it to a panel, maybe even half a panel at a time. So, you know, spray, 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 dry it off, move to the next instead of covering the whole side and then starting to dry.
I do have to say, we're pretty fortunate to have the TDS and soft water that we have.
Yeah, very.
All the water that was oversprayed onto the hood, I just, you know, ran my finger across it. There's absolutely no way that,
yeah,
you know, that's creating water spots. And that is a repainted hood with no protection on it.
Yep.
So I'm not worried about that at all, which is a blessing of having, again, the deionizer and or softer water in these conditions. So definitely worth the investment if you're gonna constantly wash your car in high heat like this. But hopefully you learned something from all these other things that we guided you through. Really, there's no like black magic to this. It's working faster, being prepared,
yep,
avoiding alkaline soaps or reactive soaps that have protection in them, and then keeping the car wet until you're ready to dry. That's not a crime. And then choosing the right washing method. And if you've got a tall car, get your step ladder out so you can do the roof.
Yeah.
If you're overspraying on other panels, work in a deliberate, you know, linear manner. This is not unfamiliar relative to general best practices in washing a car, but it has to be done a little faster, a little more sensitively.
Yeah, and show off the TDS meter. We haven't shown that off yet, but if you're unsure of your water quality, you know, we have these on our website. I think they're $19.99. It's a really simple device. You fill up a cup of water, or, you know, fill your bucket up full of water, dunk the TDS meter in there. I think you want to keep it in for about 5 seconds. It'll give you an instant reading and show you what level of total dissolved solids you have in your water so that you know, okay, I'm saying, you know, I've got a little more leeway, a little more time if I'm out washing in direct sun, or I need to move really quickly or potentially invest in a deionizer like we talked about at the beginning. That's never a bad idea, you know, especially if you're a mobile detailer or a professional that's doing this a lot. That will just help save you grief and headaches from water spots forming and give you a little more time so that you can work efficiently still, but not have to run around the vehicle and, you know, spend a lot of energy.
As I mentioned, it's a lot cheaper than a carport and getting permits and things like that. And then the other thing that we did talk about was an easy up tent. Now, they're not perfect, as we said, but they'll just keep those big flat panels a little cooler. So we mentioned, like, surface temperature just rocketed up from room temp in the back room at Griot's garage to 115 plus, you know, in a matter of minutes on a black car. There's not really a paint surface that you're gonna not have heat come up from, but black's gonna be the worst. And with that easy up, again, you can switch the car's direction around and work on the sides a little bit more. And then finally, when it comes to like polishing and more advanced steps, that shade will pay benefits because you can say, all right, the sun is casting its shade here on the hood. I'm gonna do all my polish work on the hood. And then while it moves around here, I'm gonna go into the interior, right? You can really just work your process based upon the sun if you've got no control of that. I do wanna point out one other really big thing. If you have absolutely no desire to buy a deionizer, if you don't want an easy up because your wife's gonna complain about it being in your garage and taking up more space, tunnel washes, not the ones you drive through, but the large covered structures that are public, are a great way to bring all your tools, get a little bit of shade, and follow the same process. Your car is going to get hotter in the drive over there, so just keep in mind that you might want to start with like vacuuming your car first, or maybe a rinse to cool off your paint surface. You definitely want to avoid working on your wheels right away because they'll be hot from, you know, the drive over. But that is another kind of Hail Mary relative to having to wash in high heat. I know when we used to wash our truck and trailer on the road, it was so big that we needed to pull it through tunnels, and we'd have to wait around till it cooled off a little bit.
Yeah, just don't use their brushes. You can, you know, a lot of those places don't mind if you bring your own soap and things like that. Just clean up after yourselves. I know I have been yelled at, I think, one do-it-yourself wash when I lived in a duplex and didn't have a great place to wash. Manager came out and was like, hey, you can't do that here.
Yeah.
Just wanted me to spend more coins on their stuff. But most of them are cool about it.
Yeah.
You're usually not leaving as much mess as some of the folks that use the do-it-yourself.
No, in fact, Jeff, our product developer, VP of product development out in Minnesota, he was driving, you know, his brand newly restored car and hit a decaying deer carcass and had to go through one of those drive-through tunnels to rinse off all of the remnants of the deer from his undercarriage. So don't be that guy. Don't leave deer guts in your local wash bay. But yeah, definitely don't drive it through the brushes from hell car wash if you're in a panic. That's not going to do you any favors, because you're just going to drive out of there and get water spots from all the water that and then get dried off. But yeah, that's definitely a backup plan. I will say the other thing, we talked about the paint, we talked about wheels. Don't start hot with either of them. Glass is probably the last specific surface we want to talk about as we kind of close this demonstration up. Glass is one of the worst surfaces to deal with in any circumstance, just because it's so finicky, but your results will drastically change with temperature on glass, because those wispy glass cleaning products will flash that much faster, leading to potential streaks. So on the exterior, you can follow those processes that we outlined. If you're gonna use a dedicated glass cleaner, again, you're gonna have to work faster, and just hopefully you're not dealing with a very high temperature glass system. Don't blame us if you get bad results in that circumstance. It's the temperature.
Especially in interior glass. You know, as this car is sitting here, this truck's sitting here, that interior is heating up. The inside is going to be, you know, hot and muggy, and a surface where, you know, you're going to, like Nick said, run into streaky issues and things like that. So work quick. Yeah.
Well, guys, hopefully you learned something from this high heat washing process. Unfortunately, we can't do it live. We opted for authenticity of a high heat circumstance at noon here in Washington, but be sure to submit your questions in the chat. Hopefully we will have answered a lot of them, but if we don't get to you, come back on Friday for No Questions Left Behind, where we will answer any of your specific questions or address any tips and tricks or things we did wrong. And announce all the giveaway winners based upon the quality questions we get from that chat. You can also post your questions in the comments below this video once it's posted to our YouTube channel for a chance to be answered in the No Questions Left Behind and a chance for the giveaway. Once again, we're giving away our water deionization system and a couple awesome hats.
So yeah, don't miss the chance. Make sure if you're submitting questions to enter that giveaway, you don't miss the No Questions Left Behind, like Nick mentioned. And if you haven't already, hit the subscribe, give us a thumbs up, and get those comments in.
Yeah, thanks for watching, guys. We love doing this for you. Next time we'll see you live in mid-August. We'll announce that date via our social media platforms, which is even more reason to follow and subscribe.
Yes.
See you all later. Have fun in your garage.
Have fun in your garage.